The Walten Files. Let's get Walten into it. Okay, so if you don't know, The Walten Files is a series that's pretty inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's, although I think it surpasses it in a lot of ways in terms of storytelling and just intrigue in general, at least to me. This video will have no spoilers for the series at all. I'll just be talking very general terms to try to convince you why you should watch this series. I really wanted to talk about this mainly because the recent episode that released, episode 5, there's 5 episodes of the series, by the way, so far on YouTube at least, I think is one of my favorite videos on YouTube, and I think one of the best examples of internet horror in general. The art style is amazing, and the themes of it and the symbolism and everything about the recent episode is so good. I've been needing to talk about it just in some capacity, so this is the way that I'm going to be talking about it, because I do think the series as a whole is very worth watching. Even though I think episode 5 far surpasses the rest of it, I think the series as a whole is very enjoyable still and very worth your time. But if you haven't seen it yet and you're interested, I'll be doing a live watch through and kind of like a guide through of the series on Saturday, August 29th at 9 p.m. EST on YouTube. I won't be spoiling anything and I won't be like pausing too much, but just like as like a guide for the series, you know? So if you ever had any interest in watching it, but just never got to it, you can either go watch it, you know, right now, or you could watch it then and have a better understanding of the story after it. So I mentioned the FNAF inspirations. I would say that the Walten Files is mainly inspired by FNAF from like a very basic standpoint. It surrounds a restaurant with animatronics, and the animatronics happen to be a little bit haunted and get a bit quirky at night. But a lot of the similarities kind of ends there. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god, I have the most scuffed setup of all time for this. Like, it's actually... Let me get like a selfie. I feel like a lot of people always have the notion that something that's inspired by another work can never surpass the original work, and I just don't agree with that take at all. I think at this point, basically everything that's created is inspired by something. It's a little bit discouraging to new people making new things to say that they'll never be able to surpass their inspirations. I don't really see saying of the Walten Files as a better series than FNAF as, you know, like a sacrilegious thing. I just don't really see that as like that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. I won't be giving too much of an outline of the overall story just to not spoil it. The restaurant has 2 owners, and it follows them and kind of their families and how the restaurant kind of affects their families in the overall scheme of things. And that's a it is like the best broad explanation that I can give without going too much into spoilers or anything. And you know, there's a lot of sad things that happen and scary things that happen. So I'm just gonna go over why I love this series so much and kind of why I think more people should get into it. This is just gonna be me, you know, maybe this is coming from a neurodivergent place, maybe it's coming from an artistic literature, love of the game place, but I think it's, you know, it's probably the former if we're gonna be so honest, but you know. So the first reason that I love this series so much is the improvement to the series over time. The first video was uploaded somewhere around 2020, and since then they've improved the series so much. Like, I think it's almost worth a watch just to see how much it's improved over time. And that's not saying that the first episodes are bad or that they're not worth watching. They're definitely aged a little bit, if I'm gonna be honest. They're not bad, it's just they're very, very analog horror, because it started a lot of the tropes that you see in analog horror, and it was one of the first kind of very popular, very monumental, I guess, ones. But because there's so many more now, and there's so many that have kind of taken those ideas and improved on them. However, over time, they really started to try to like hone just everything about the series. Everything about the series, from the art style to the characters to how the horror is portrayed, basically just everything has improved tremendously from the start. The improvement from the first episode to this recent episode that just released, at least to me, is part of the enjoyment of this series. And it's also become a lot more of a professional story in that way too. I feel like with analog horror, a lot of the topic shown and a lot of this imagery shown is very much so for shock value a lot of the time. And that was definitely very apparent in the original episodes. A lot that was shown was primarily just for shock value of like, oh, it's a creepy face that just randomly pops up. Oh, it's so scary. But I feel like they've moved away from that in a lot of ways and are able to tell a much more professional and I guess mature horror story through imagery, through content, through just everything. And one of the main things that's improved, at least to me, is the art style. The art style is so good now. They managed to maintain a lot of the characteristics of the original art style, but just improve on it to a tremendous degree. The original art style was good because it was unsettling. You felt uncomfortable watching it. You didn't necessarily feel scared. You just felt uncomfortable. But the new art style keeps that same discomfort, but just improves upon the actual art style by so much that I'll watch some of it and just be completely enamored by the art style. Like not be able to say a word. I was watching this recent episode with friends and we were joking throughout the entire episode. Then it got to the final scene, which if you know, you know, and we all stopped talking. Like there was not a sound being uttered at all because we were all so transfixed by what was by what was happening on screen that we could not utter a single word because of how good the art style has become, as well as just everything about the series. It's just so good. The art style is so gorgeous now that it just it's just so cool to see how much it's improved over time. It's just so good. It's just so good. The next thing that, at least for me, is really impactful is the characters. Whereas FNAF, I feel like focused a lot on the animatronics and the mascot characters a lot, and like the designs for everything, but kind of fell short of kind of having compelling characters that you could really relate to and really empathize with. The Walten Files kind of does the opposite a little bit, where the mascots are definitely like a part of it and a pretty large part of it, but there's so much more focus on the characters surrounding the mascots, as well as the character of the mascots themselves. Every character has very defining character traits, and every character you can empathize with basically every character in the series, which is not really something you could do with FNAF that well, just because they didn't focus on the characters. Whereas the Walten Files focuses on the characters, and the mascots themselves are kind of like the side plot of it. And I think that's a really important thing to me, at least, just because I feel like people underestimate just how important characters are to the enjoyment of a series. They're the main thing that people care about. So having good characters with a good premise that FNAF already had just makes it an even better series, in my opinion. And all the characters are really compelling, including the more shall we say, scary characters. That doesn't make sense at all. I don't really know what I was implying with that, but yeah. Okay, this is gonna be a kind of weird section, but one of the reasons that I like the Walten Files so much is the humor that surrounds this series. They have a bunch of kind of offshoot episodes and a bunch of videos advertising like their merch and stuff, and they are really funny for a series that isn't, based on comedy and humor. And I feel like a lot of that humor just kind of creep into the episodes a little bit. They are very respectful where, if something awful is happening, they're not going to crack a joke over it. But if there's like a light moment, a lot of the humor does shine through into the actual mainline episodes themselves. And just kind of on a more personal level, the name itself has become such a meme for Walten Files fans. The Walten part of it, the name itself is so fun to say and so, I guess, memeable. Or not even memeable, but it's so easy to just throw into every ordinary sentence that you can think of. And it just fits somehow. Like, why did I think of, I'm Walten here? That's just not what okay, I'm gonna stop. There's a very big sense of humor to this series that I think kind of helps a lot with my enjoyment of it too. The next part is kind of a little bit more of a complicated subject, but it's very impressive to me that the team was able to change the series so much and change the art style so much without the series feeling very different. I feel like a lot of people kind of get trapped in their own ideas sometimes. And a lot of people kind of have the notion that if they make a series a certain way, they have to keep the series the same exact way or people are gonna not enjoy it as much. But I feel like the Walten Files was able to keep so much of the original art style and the original flair of the series while almost completely changing it for the better. There's no negative change to it at all, where I feel like, going back to FNAF, they changed the series a lot, and in my opinion, even for the better, but a lot of people were upset over the change with like Security Breach and Ruin and Secret of the Mimic and stuff. A lot of people were very upset with the change and kind of wanted to go back to the original FNAF feeling. But I feel like it is a lot more compelling of a story now, but a lot of people just aren't okay with that. But I feel like the Walten Files is able to kind of shift into being a much more compelling story and have a lot better of an art style while managing to improve on every episode that they've released without kind of getting into that territory of like, oh, this isn't like the original. I kind of don't like it because of that. I feel like I've never really seen people say that. They might have a personal favorite episode that's one of the older episodes, and that's completely fine. But I feel like most people tend to agree that the newer episodes just keep getting better and improving tremendously. And it's really impressive to see just how much they've improved without getting any of that like trappedness, if that makes sense. It's very impressive from a creative team to see them flesh out an idea to such an insane degree and just not feel the pressure to hold back at all. So my next favorite part is there's kind of a backwards mystery element to it. I don't know if that's the right term, but we kind of know the full story of the series at this point, or at least to me, it's fairly obvious how the story progresses and how it ends. Not necessarily ends, but how this first major section of the series ends. But a lot of my intrigue with the series isn't the end. It's not the finale. It's how we get to the finale, which I think is a lot of the really interesting parts to me. It's a series where you can't really get spoiled because they spoil the series in like the first 2 episodes of the series, and you basically know everything about the series at that point. But then the later episodes are basically just filling in the little details between how you get from point A to point B. And I think that's a really interesting way to tell a story because they keep going back and just like reiterating on things and like expanding how things happen, why things happen, how these characters reacted to these things happening. And I feel like that makes it a lot more interesting to me, at least personally. With other stories that are very linear, there's always a feeling of like, oh, well, I know how this ends. I got spoiled with how this ends, so I don't really feel like I need to watch this anymore. But with the Walten Files, I feel like the intrigue isn't the finale, isn't the end point of the linear timeline. It's everything in between that they're still filling out and still going through with the audience. And I feel like that is a really cool way to tell a story because there's an expectation for the ending. But the expectation for the ending is so far removed from what seems logical and seems reasonable that it's really interesting to see how they'll get there. And kind of connected to that, they've managed to mix such a sense of realism into such a weird premise. I feel like the concept of haunted animatronics in a family fun restaurant that are haunted and kill people at night. That is a very, unrealistic premise. I guess like technically speaking, if, things were able to get possessed, it would be possible. But it's such like a weird premise to have to explain to someone that doesn't know what FNAF is or what the Walten Files is or what anything like that is. But they've managed to mix such a sense of realism into it that I think it becomes like way more entrancing to me because they show the characters so much more and they show their personalities so much more. You get so much more invested into them and it becomes more of a realistic story because of that. Even though it's not a realistic premise at all, you start feeling for the characters way more and you start believing everything way more. And the art style itself isn't realistic at all. It's a very cartoony art style, but because of the way they've transformed it and the way that they've managed to improve on it, there is almost a sense of realism to the art style itself that makes the more artistic bits so much more impressive and so much more captivating, at least to me, you know? The other thing that I really love is some of the extra episodes that they've included that I think I mentioned previously, mainly the Mysterious House and the Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit. They are kind of a connected series, but they are really, really good. The Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit specifically is genuinely one of my favorite pieces of content that they've made. It's probably my second favorite video that they've made. It kind of came out at a time where we didn't really get to see the full improvements that they were making to the series yet, but it showed so much potential and so much improvement that they were already making to the series. So it was so cool to see just how much they improved from the previous episode to the extra episode, Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit, that it just was like, it was mind-blowing at first, to be honest. And it gave me a lot of excitement to see where they were going to take the series just because of how well animated and how improved that video was compared to their previous videos. Personally, if you just want to get into kind of the feeling of the Walten Files, The Mysterious House and The Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit is a very good place to start just because it's a lot shorter of a series than the mainline Walten Files series, and you don't really need to know anything about it to watch that series. It's a completely standalone thing. So if you want to get the vibe of the series and see if it's something you might like, that's probably where I would recommend starting. Relating to Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit too, one of my favorite bits of the series is the voice acting of the main character. The voice actress for that, she does such an amazing job with the villains that it's just genuinely mind-boggling how good it is. like I can't explain it without spoiling too much. But it's so captivating and it's so horrifically unsettling that everybody that I've shown it to kind of has the same reaction of, I just don't know how to feel after this. Like, you feel so grossed out, but in such like an entranced way, if that makes sense. You feel just so uncomfortable. It's just so good. The art style in the recent episodes with the voice acting, like, it just makes it so cool. And like, so anytime that I pull up the video to just watch like a section of it, I like can't help but watch the entire like 20-minute section because I get fully transfixed and I can't look away. And that doesn't happen with like anything for me. Maybe the best comparison that I can think of is the Tar Man in Return of the Living Dead. Like, of that feeling of like, this is gross, but it's not so gross that I want to look away, so I can't look away, if that makes sense. I don't know if that just makes sense to me, but that's like the best example that I can give. For this final part, I just want to give my reasoning for why I think it kind of surpasses FNAF in a lot of ways, but I think the nostalgia that I have for FNAF is also why I enjoy this series a lot. I grew up with FNAF and it was a very big part of my childhood. So anything that's related to FNAF or anything that's inspired by FNAF, I think I'm going to naturally love a lot just because the premise always interested me as a kid and it has remained interesting me as an adult. So anything that resembles FNAF or anything that is inspired by FNAF, I will always enjoy by default. But I think just personally, the Walten Files manages to surpass FNAF in storytelling, in art style, in maybe even just premise. In story, well, maybe not premise just because they have the same premise, but story premise and just story in general. It's so much better written, it's so much better directed, and it's so much more clear of a story, which I think is why it's so enjoyable. There's so many things that are just told to you that you don't have to guess. You know kind of what happens, So the interesting part is figuring out why and trying to think about why, rather than, oh, I have no idea what happens. Let me try to like piece together what could possibly have happened or why this possibly happened, but it doesn't really make sense. So like, the fun part of FNAF is not knowing, you know, like that's why people love FNAF so much, is because the mystery is so vague and there's not a whole lot of actual things that are told to you. But that's the fun part, right? Trying to figure that out and trying to solve a mystery that seems almost unsolvable, but I'm sure it is solvable to a degree. But the WALTEN files is kind of just solved, but the in-betweens and everything about it is the mystery part of it, which I think is a lot more interesting, at least to me. So yeah. And with the mix of art style and direction, I am a little bit uncertain if I'll actually like episode 6 more than episode 5. Just because, in my opinion, the episodes progressively get better and better as they go on. So, you know, 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 2, 4 is better than 3, 5 is better than 4. Like, that, to me, is the order of how good they are. But 5 and 6 are going to be very similar in art style because they were being produced at, like, the same time. Although they stopped that because they wanted to get episode 5 out, which I think was a very good decision overall. But episode 5 is so symbolic with its imagery and so symbolic with the themes that it's expressing, whereas it seems like 6 is going to be a little bit more realistic and a little bit less symbolic and thematic, which I think I might not enjoy it as much just because it's less artistic and less fun in that way, just because 5 was so cool. Like 5 is genuinely probably one of my favorite videos on YouTube because it tells a very grounded story in a way that only the art style they've crafted could. There's a lot of symbolism that they've managed to put into it because of the art style and because of just how they tell it and how they set up the story before it. So I think 6 being seemingly, maybe I'm completely wrong, you know, maybe I'll be completely wrong, but it seems like 6 is going to be a much more grounded, realistic episode than episode 5 was. So I don't know if I'll enjoy it as much personally, but I know it'll still be very good just because I love the art style and I love the story that they've set up. So I know I'll like it anyway, but that's just kind of like my thoughts for the future, you know, like I like that's not really important at all. It's just kind of like my thoughts and my overall opinions on like where I think that's gonna go, you know? But yeah, that might wrap it up here. I hope you enjoyed. I know it was very yapping and I just kind of yap. But I've been holding it in for a while since I saw episode 5 that I just had to like get it out in some capacity because I genuinely think episode 5 is so good and it's so peak. It's so unbelievably peak. But yeah, I hope you had a good day and I hope this convinced you to watch. Maybe it didn't, maybe it did. Who knows? Okay, bye.